Hi, everybody. Jennifer from Gals here. Welcome to our Saturday night live Facebook broadcast. This is only our second one, so I do ask for everybody to please be kind if I make some mistakes. I wouldn't have my microphone on tonight if it weren't for Kathy Ferrara, so thank you. So feel free to critique, but please be kind. And I'm learning as I go along. Like I said, this is only my second official Gals live stream. I have invited a co-host. I hope she can join in. I'm very new at this, so I apologize if she can't join in. I'm going to see if I can invite her. I am doing this from a PC, and it does have some limitations. So, Kristen, if you're there, give a like, give a comment, try to join in as the co-host, or we can talk through the keyboard. So again, welcome to Gals, our second live stream. I want to remind folks that what we're listening to is opinion, mainly mine, and I'm not here to argue. I welcome opposing opinions to what we talk about, but again, let's be respectful and let's be kind. This is an 18 and older space. We're talking about some things that might be scary to some folks. This is a 420 friendly space, so smoke them if you got them, because I know I will. But really, kick back and enjoy yourself. Let's have a conversation. We have something really interesting to talk about. So again, I do hope that Kristen can join us. Because if she can't, I'm going to talk about it anyways, but I would really prefer to talk about it with her input. So we'll give her a couple minutes to sign on. And like I said, welcome and welcome back. If you've been here before, join the conversation. This is Gals, all paranormal, never politics. This isn't the place for it. All paranormal, never politics. Let's have some fun. So I haven't heard from Kristen yet. Let me check my notifications. So I see that she's liked this, but I don't see any comments. Kristen, I added you as a co-host. So if you could check your notifications and see if there's any way you can join. Otherwise, let's talk through comments anyways. And Alex, hi Alex, I'm glad you joined us. I'm glad you can hear me this time. My microphone was off. So again, welcome folks. Smoke them if you got them. This is a 420 friendly space. Don't mind this behind me. It's up with tape, so if it falls, I'm sorry. But let's get right into it. So, Kristen, I don't see you as a co-host, and I apologize, and I really have to work on this, but please send me a comment. I would like to say how I met Kristen. Let's start with that. So, obviously, I'm on Facebook because here I am on Facebook Live. And last week, I did a live stream, and I had so much fun with it. The few people who joined in and that watched it, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And besides the fact I could listen to my own self talk all day long. Excuse me. There we go. So anyway, so after the live stream, I said, well, I really liked that and I'd like to do it again, but maybe just not all about me. So I threw out there into the Facebook world, if anybody wanted to be interested, hit me up. And Kristen hit me up, I don't know, probably within minutes. And so I slid into her DM, as the expression goes, and we started talking. And she was telling me a little bit about where she lives. And she was just telling me some things that were just kind of making sense to me, if you will. And out of the blue, I had asked her a really random question about a dog bite, what seemed like a random question about a dog bite. And she answered back, "How did you know?" And it turns out Kristen and I have at least one person in common, Christy Parrish. I had certainly heard of Kristen through Christy and Kristen's fantastic property. And so I did hear about an incident with a dog bite. So it was really kind of synchronicitous that I had heard of Kristen and her magnificent property, and then randomly our paths crossed on Facebook, and we kind of clicked on Facebook, and we were talking through DMs, and I could certainly tell this is somebody I'm going to enjoy talking to. So we were chatting back and forth for a couple of minutes. So it was kind of cool. let me bounce into my, let's see. All right, I still don't see Kristen. Well, again, Facebook. I think at this point, gang, I think within the next month I'm going to purchase StreamYard because I really want to do this and I really want to do this right. And oh, hi, Sybil. Sybil, I'm so glad that you joined us. I think Sybil, you're going to enjoy the story that I have to tell. And Kristen, with all due respect, please let me continue. And as I always say at the beginning of these things, and it's really important, so much of this is my very own research. And oh, Kristen, I'm trying to invite you, so please comment, and we will have this conversation. Okay. I'm so sorry. I invited you as a co-host, and let's see. No, and I can't invite you. And hello, Aunt Mary. So, all right, Kristen. Well, I'm going to dive in, and again, I am reading my comments, so I'm more than happy to interact with you. So that is how Kristen and my paths crossed, was through Facebook and her wanting to be interviewed, and then us finding out that we had some people in common. So Kristen told me a little bit about her property, which is in New Hampshire, kind of off the beaten path. Um, and I did some research on this property. It used to be a hotel. I did some research on this property, and I'll tell you, in about an hour's time, guys, I got 4 pages of notes about this history of this house, and my history only goes up to 1925. So there's a lot of history that I don't have, and what I don't know is how Kristen acquired this property, and that is a big part. My focus of tonight is to find out, Kristen, how did you acquire this property? So, if I may, I'd like to share some of my research with you. So, I'm going to tell a little bit of a story before we get to the part about how Kristen acquired this property. And I'm going to tell you some things that happened there. Um, any mistakes are mine. My research was, I mean, it didn't even have like a source library. It was a PDF 3-page document that I found online, and there were a lot of typos in it. However, that being said, a lot of the things that I did find in this 2 or 3 page document really rung true for the time period that this property was up and coming. I mean, how do you get to 2025? Well, you got to start somewhere, right? Um, so, um, all right, Kristen, see what Sybil is saying. See if you can jump on your cell phone and give that a shot. And because we really need to have you in this conversation. Um, I hope so. And I can probably end this and jump on my cell phone too. So Kristen, let's see how you make out. Let's see. I'm trying to ban from. No, I can't. I can't invite. So, anyways, all right, I'm going to take a couple of seconds, and I am going to start telling the story. Um, and again, with all due respect, Kristen, if nothing else, comment, because I will comment back. I am reading comments, and my goal here, always on Gals, Ghosts, and Ladies Facebook Live, is to be interactive. This is a conversation. So correct me, pipe in, let's hear what you've got to say. And so without further ado, I am going to go ahead and start talking a little bit about the property. And please forgive me for looking at my notes. I did buy a new pen for this, and that was really satisfying. I got a purple flare and purple paper, and for some reason it made me really happy. So anyways, enjoy. So this area in New Hampshire, where Kristen currently lives now, as I said, is off the beaten path. This area being off the beaten path in New Hampshire, this land has been occupied for long before we ever got here. And as I've said before, I'm not here to have a colonization conversation. That's another conversation on another page for another day. This is to say that there were natives that lived on that land. If you know anything about, the history of America, the history of New England, the history of New Hampshire, there were, native peoples that lived here. And I think that as the colonizers, the colonizers ended up in places where Native Americans were, because Native Americans knew where there was fertile land, where there was water. So, I mean, people coming over from England had to kind of figure this stuff out, so they followed that. So anyways, my point being, that area has been occupied for a very, very long time. And what I found of a kind of a white man history, pardon the expression, but a white man history, and probably English settlers or settlers from the Massachusetts Bay Colony, well, of which New Hampshire probably was at that time. But they settled that area before 1799, and has Kristen had mentioned to me, this town that she's in, I think, is coming up on its 300th anniversary, or it's 300 years old. So it's been occupied by quote unquote Americans for a very long time. The property itself, that we're kind of talking about, has been a tavern since 1799. So that's a lot of ale, that's a lot of brawling, that's a lot of spittoons, that's a lot of probably ladies of the evening, or whatever they were called back then. So there's, always those kind of histories in any kind of tavern or anywhere that they serve alcohol. Excuse me. And then in the 1800s, the Cilley, Cilley, the Cilley family settled in that area. And it may be pronounced Siley, but my maiden name is Silibert, so I like pronouncing this as Silly. So I just felt like it was kind of a synchronicity thing. So anyways, in the 1800s, the Cilley family settled there. Oh, dropped a page. And like most people back then, because there wasn't birth control, they had a very large family, but sadly the Cilley family did lose two children at a very young age, two sons, Joseph and Daniel. I don't know how old they were, and I don't know how they passed away, but that wasn't uncommon back then, to have a really large family and to lose a couple of children through accident, illness, whatever. They didn't have antibiotics and stuff. So that happened on this property. At least two children that we know of on paper passed away there. Sad, but common, very common. So what the Cilley family did was they founded the Cilley Tavern, and there's some back and forth between the Cilley Tavern and the Suncook Tavern. I'm not sure of all the names during all of the times, and again, there were some typos in the document. It still makes for an interesting story to see how this plays out. In 1833, the Cilley Tavern experienced 3 arsons. There, Kristen is saying 2027 is 300 years, and the property, 200 acres, was awarded to General Cilley. So that is how General Cilley acquired that property. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you very much. And I'm glad we're able to interact. I promise to get better at this. I promise. For this being my second one, I think that we're doing so far so good. But what I was saying was, in 1833 there wasn't one arson, weren't two, there were 3 arsons, and the tavern was almost lost, and the house on the property was barely saved. And barns were lost and rebuilt. So not barns. If you, again, consider the time period, agriculture was very big, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that as time goes on. So for properties to have more than one barn, that makes sense. But 3 arsons in 1 year, that's a lot. Again, I only researched one afternoon. I'd be interested to find why this family or this property was targeted 3 times in one summer. That seems a little excessive to me. Arson is bad enough as it is, but 3 times. Anyways, so eventually this property, the silly family was getting older, and they were dying off, so they sold the property to William Goss. And again, apologizing for any errors, but I think the story does have a bit of a flow to it. It did make sense to me. Um, so William Goss bought the property. It's also important to note during that time that William Goss bought the property, there were Civil War veterans that returned to this area. There were Civil War soldiers that went to war and didn't make it home from this area. There were Civil War soldiers who went to war and made it home and then died from their injuries or their illness. So there's that deep effect there of the ravages of war. And back then, these rural communities, maybe they were spread out by acreage and whatever, but they were small communities. So these things had an impact on the communities around them. And the Civil War was a very important part of the American history, and we know that there's a lot of emotion tied to it. It's a lot of emotion tied with any war. There's a lot of blood spilled. We know that those kind of things can kind of resonate after the fact. So in 1859, the Goss family, they had a fire in one of their barns, one of the barns that had been rebuilt in 1833. So weird. Another fire 20 something years later. Sorry about my math. So again, some suspicious fires over the years on this property. And then eventually, houses were literally relocated to this area to build the area up. So they certainly built properties and built houses and homes and barns and stuff, but homes were relocated to this area. So I just have to say, isn't that kind of interesting? Instead of building so many things from the ground up that you import, they brought in I believe, a Baptist church. They brought in somebody's parents' house. So it's just an interesting way to build a community instead of through construction, if you ask me. And like I said at the beginning, this is all about my opinion. Excuse me. So anyways, and at that time, as the area got bigger, a shoe factory came into play there. And Kristen, I thought that was interesting. Kristen, we both know where you were born. I don't want to throw that kind of personal stuff out there. Feel free to say it if you want. But where you are from is from a very, very big area of shoe manufacturing. And where you are now, there was a very, very big shoe manufacturer. And that employed a lot of people, and this area really got built up. So again, there was construction besides the homes that were brought in. And William Goss was a very big stockholder in this shoe company. And there was just a big building boom in the area. And we're looking at about 1894, Goss sold the property to Chaplain Osgood in October of 1894. And in 1896, 2 barns, the stable, a shed, that were connected to the hotel all burned down. They lost 14 cows and they lost tons of hay. And let's put that into perspective for a minute. Tons of hay. That's like tons of feathers. Tons of hay. So there's 2 things that I think of when I think of losing tons of hay. First of all, that's a lot of effing hay. That's a lot of hay, because hay is really lightweight. But the other thing is, you've got livestock and you bale hay and you sell it and you store it and you use it. What a financial devastation to lose that amount of hay, and then what a devastation to feeding your livestock. So there's so much more here than just a building burning down and losing cows. And my first thought was tons of hay. That's just kind of funny to think about. It. How much hay is tons of hay? That's a lot. So again, there was financial impact as well, and there must have been an impact on feeding their animals. And just another weird freaking fire at this place. And the other thing about this fire was this fire started in the barn, and they found that it was unusual because, yeah, Kathy, another fire, crazy. They found this fire unusual because they had verified there had been no lighting and no lanterns in the barn for a full 24 hours. So they don't come right out and say that it was arson, but they also don't have an explanation for it. As far as a lantern, or remember, was Mrs. O'Leary's cow was that the Great Chicago Fire kicked over a lantern and burnt the city down. So, oops. But anyways, that was not the case here. So they don't know what happened. It was a suspicious fire. So barns and the stable were a complete loss, and they were rebuilt. So they do keep rebuilding on this land, and that's interesting. There's a history of a lot of breaking down, building up, fires, and building back up. And also there is a history of the hotel cutting. From what I could understand, they were calling it an ELL, and it seemed to me that they had cut off an L-shaped part of the building and sold it to somebody else, or somebody else had sold them an L-shaped part of the building and they added to it. So there's that kind of cross building as well that went on there. And the town grew, and then now we find ourselves in the late 1800s. In 1897, brace yourself, surprise, you won't see this one coming, or will ya? In 1897, lightning totaled the rebuilt stables. What's that word? Fire. Another fire. What I haven't done is gone through and tallied all these up. But I'm telling you, we're 3, 4, 5, we're probably at 5 or 6 really weird fires. Even the arsons, going back into was it the 17 or 1800s, the arsons, the articles didn't come out and say who did it or why they did it. So I think that's really weird. Who had a gripe against family. So anyways, again, we find ourselves with another fire. This one, natural, lightning. But I think that we know, and I'm going to look to Sybil, I'm sure you know, lightning is very powerful. Electricity is very powerful. For something to attract lightning. In fact, I believe it was struck by lightning twice. So lightning does strike twice. So the house and the hotel were spared this time, for a change. Let's see. So that was page 2. So, all right. So now, again, we're still in the late 1800s. In December of 1897, Osgood sold the hotel to Charles Sumner Hall. It was called the Gossville Hotel. Not sure when they named it that, but now here's something interesting. This Charles Sumner Hall. Again, I know I'm going to skew some of the details, but there's some weird shit here. So Charles Sumner Hall somehow defaulted on the mortgage, and he lost the property, the hotel. So a man named Edgar White acquired it a few years later. Somehow it ends up back in the hands of Charles Sumner Hall. And in 1916, it became the Hotel Sumner Hall, something like that. And the building was remodeled, and there were additions, and more stuff happened. And as time went on, this guy became the richest guy in the county. So he was the wealthiest man in the county. And again, I only had a PDF document, so who knows what happened in some of those in-between years, like between 1916 and 1925, but he did become the wealthiest man in the area, and he owned the hotel, and I think he lived in the hotel. And there came a point, I don't even have the exact date here, but he was suffering from insomnia, and he saw a doctor for it. And interestingly, the doctor's name was Dr. Blood, Blood. Yep, just like blood. But he saw Dr. Blood and was treated for insomnia. Now, this was 1925. What could treatment for insomnia have been? Anything. Anything. It could have been morphine. It could have been morphine. Or it could have been morphine. Right? I mean, come on. Or it could have been codeine. Or I think people weren't giving cocaine for insomnia ever. But seriously, he was what could they have possibly been giving him? Something that wasn't good for him. And then so now you've got a couple things going on. You've got insomnia going on. You've most likely got some type of drug use or abuse going on. We know how opiates operate. And at some point, after this few day period of not sleeping and seeing Dr. Blood and being treated for the insomnia, he murdered another resident of the hotel. Mrs. Snow was her name, and they were quite friendly. They had no quarrel, and they had known each other for years. I believe it was Mr. Hall's nephew that discovered everything, and he discovered Charles Hall dead in the hotel at the age of 72 with the revolver gripped in his hand. And Mrs. Snow was also shot. So it really was a very senseless crime. There was nobody saying, any kind of quarreling. Were they having an affair? Was it love gone bad? Who knows? So it's just very interesting. So that's how we get from the 1700s to the 1900s. And Kristen, like I said, my history ends there at 1925. I don't know how you ended up in possession of this property. If you'd like to talk about it and type it, I'd be more than happy to share it. But I did find that reading that a few things stood out to me, and let's see what all of you think, if any of these things stood out to you. The least of which is being the fires, because the fires are just right in your face. How many fires were there? I don't know, but 3 in 1 year, 2 lightning strikes in 1 year, that's 5. So I think we're up to 7 now that we know about. So I find that very interesting. Fire is very powerful. And fires, it not only is fire very powerful, but people who light fires are screwy. And yeah, so anyways, so just really, really weird. Also, I'd like to point out that, as I said, this is New Hampshire. And New Hampshire is the what state? It's the granite state. And what about the stone tape theory? Does anybody out there in Jennifer's Gals Facebook Live know about the stone tape theory? The stone tape theory is the theory that stone, especially granite, can hold, and I'm pulling this out of my brain, so I'm sure I'm going to do a hatchet job, and I apologize. But granite and rock and granite can hold memory and residual and almost an ethereal record of something that happened on the property that was ethereal, like an ethereal record of something that happened on a property. And in my mind, I kind of equate that with almost like a psychic echo. So like there was a fire here and there's going to be fires here. That's again the Jennifer's opinion. I would love to hear somebody else's theory about that, but I think that you have a lot of sadness in that area. We know that there were young children that died in the 1700s, and that's always sad. And not just that people passed away, but the grief that people feel and experience, that gives off an energy. I think that can be held in granite. So we're talking about an area, I think, that from the looks of it has experienced some emotional impacts. Some emotional impacts, for lack of a better word. Another thing, the property has a really long history of human settlement. Well, I guess these two things go hand in hand. When you have a long history of human settlement, you are going to have deaths and war casualties and babies dying, and that's a reality. And so you are going to have those kind of things happen. There's a history on this property of buildings being cut up, shuffled, moved around. So you've got a history of a family living in this building with their lives and loves and births and deaths and tragedies and traumas and everything else. And a piece of this house gets taken and put onto a piece of this house, which has its own lives, loves, births, deaths, so on and so forth. So you're really kind of swapping things out. It's kind of weird that this place kind of had a history of that. And also bringing the houses in, like bringing a church in instead of building a church. That's got to do something to the energy, I would imagine. The history of the Civil War deaths, the casualties during the Civil War, and the people who came home and were maimed, and the people who came home and and died from their injuries or illnesses afterwards. That has an impact on a community. So you have almost like mass grieving when you have those kind of deaths and casualties. I'm not making any commentaries on any wars. What I am saying is we all understand grief when someone dies, whether they die in a war or die for another reason. Um, the fires. I'm sorry, going down my list. The destruction. The impact of that kind of energy, of those kind of fires that were so destructive, um, and the emotions that people experience when they have those kind of fires, and the charged energy of the people who respond to those kind of things. We call them first responders now, firemen, EMTs, and police. Back then, they'd be lucky if they had a volunteer fire department. They would be lucky if they had a chain of people that could pass buckets back and forth from a pond or a lake. I mean, God, there weren't fire hydrants, you know, and not for nothing. Who lives in my area? There was a fire in Lawrence, and it was a bad fire, and the fire hydrants didn't work. So, anyways, but back to what I was saying about the area, firefighting had a very different look to it. And also, speaking about firefighting having a different look to it, now we've got buildings and construction materials that are really fire resistant and have been for many years. We've got sprinkler systems, we've got smoke detectors and fire alarms, and they didn't have any of that back then. So it was really and Kristen, I've got to respond to your comment. These small towns were very heavily reliant on each other. They were. And also, I think in these small towns being heavily reliant on each other, a lot of them were related. I mean, you know, if this family had 6 kids and that family had 6 kids, and um, you know, Aunt Mary, if you're still watching, I want to say something about my family. In my family, two of my aunts, two of my father's sisters married 2 brothers. My Aunt Mary and my Aunt Jean married Uncle Gary and Uncle Wayne. And in our family, that was a real novelty. And it was really exciting to kind of meld with the Sparks family and one big happy family. And we just loved it. But it was kind of a novelty thing for us. But back in those days, in the 1700s, early 1800s, in rural settings, when families had 5 and 6 kids, it was very common for siblings of this family to marry siblings of that family. And the point of that is to say that what you end up in these being reliant on your community is you're not just helping your community, it's probably your family or an in-law or a cousin or a sister-in-law or your brother's spouse or your sister's spouse. These communities were heavily family oriented. And you have to keep that in mind too. And so probably who do you end up having fight these fires would be your family members. I mean, even that would be trauma. So again, I'm kind of talking about some events, emotional events, some traumatic events, even some weirdly external, if you want to call the fires external events that have happened on this property, that happens to be on granite, that happens to have been inhabited for many, many, many years. I wonder if these things, like is there a perfect storm? Like, would all of these things coming together kind of impact each other? And cause things to happen or invite things to happen? That's my question to you, Kristen. Think about an answer while I continue talking. Okay? Do you think that the things that have happened on your property impact other experiences that you've had, or other things out there? So I would love to hear your answer. And I want to say something. Kathy said fire consumes everything, and the loss. Again, I just kind of keep going back to finding a lot of grief in this area. In this area, the loss of the fire, not just, and I didn't never saw anything about loss of human life in a fire. Thank goodness. Oh my God, what an awful way to go. But I'm sure people were injured fighting the fires. The firefighting is dangerous business, even now with all the protective equipment that they have. Um, So, and then again, the grief of losing family, the grief of losing the food for your livestock. That must have been devastating to lose those tons of hay. Um, and financially, maybe they were selling it to other families, and now the other families can't feed their livestock. So I just see a lot of ripple effect. Something happens in this community, and boy, does everybody feel it. Um, I want to talk for a minute about Charles Sumner Hall. Um, Interesting that he was the wealthiest man in the area. But it's also interesting that in his early days, when he first acquired the hotel, that he somehow lost it somehow to foreclosure. So I am, I don't know if I'm drawing a conclusion, but this is a needle and I've sewn a thread through it. And I want to take a kind of thread and kind of, sorry about that, kind of weave it through something and see if anybody else, I don't know, makes what I do out of it, or am I just nuts, or both? So Charles Sumner Hall ends up at this property after all these weird things have happened. After all these years, there've been fires, there've been deaths and wars, blah, 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 bloodshed, and probably murders, and again the tavern, people drinking. So there's all kinds of energy imprinted there. So he ends up with the hotel and he loses it, and we don't know why. Well, you don't just lose a hotel, and I think in especially in that day, I don't know, I find it interesting that if he lost it, or they foreclosed on his mortgage, his finances weren't the best. They don't foreclose when things are in good standing, right. So after he lost the hotel, he acquired it again and he became the wealthiest man in the town. So I wonder what happened there. There's a very weird up and down that doesn't. I don't know. I think back during that time, in these times, you can have a rags to rags to riches, up and down. In these times, in those times, you couldn't do. You were up or you were down, and when you were down, that was the end. People in the community turned your back on you. There was. Oh, hi, Carrie, and welcome, Carrie. Carrie is Kristen's sister. Carrie brought up a really good point, and she said that some of the fires may have been lit for insurance money. That, in and of itself, is a nefarious motive. That is not a good reason to have a fire. Well, no reason is, but you know what I mean. So that's a bad motive, and again, bad motives. When you put things out to the universe, things come back to you. So if you put bad shit out like that, watch out, because bad shit's going to come back to you. Okay. So, and here we are talking about Charles Sumner Hall, and I'm kind of like putting that needle through all these things. So I just think that it's weird that he was wealthy and then he wasn't wealthy, and he lost the hotel, and then he got the hotel back, and then now he's the wealthiest man in the community, and nobody dislikes him. Um, but Sybil, if Sybil said that seems to happen a lot. If you think about it, back in those times, it was shameful to lose your fortune. Nowadays, people file bankruptcy every day, and it's no big deal, you know. But back then, if you lost everything, it was shameful. It's just a really interesting up and down. I wonder where his fortune came from. I'd be interested to look a little more, excuse me, into that. Um, but so, and then why this bout of insomnia in his 70s? And then what did they treat it with? I think that's really an important point here. If anybody disagrees with that point, pipe up. But if I'm going to take all your silence for concurring with me, that he probably was on morphine or maybe codeine, even in a liquid form or something like that. There's my pal Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Um, Nice to see you. Um, so yeah, and it is your whole life, Sybil. It is. So, um, Kathy, never seen a broke politician, that's for sure. And I don't think that's right. But again, this is Gals. All paranormal, never politics. um, so again, this Charles Sumner Hall, I just find it interesting that just some really weird things happened in his life. And how do you find yourself at the age of 72 as most likely on medication, heavy duty opiates or something for insomnia, which to be treated for a week of insomnia, I don't know, would they give somebody an Ambien for a week of insomnia right now? No, they'd probably say don't drink coffee before bed, try not to eat a heavy meal before bed, do some light exercise before bed. I think in this day and age, that would be the prescription before a script, before a real prescription. Um, and Kristen, he became involved in politics heavily, so that's how he worked his way back up. So, and Carrie, you're thinking dementia, and I was thinking along the lines of two things: either dementia, or then I thought like schizophrenia, because I know that there are some people with schizophrenia who believe they're not sleeping and they're really dreaming, and it's really very sad. So it's possible that and this is just me talking, I have no medical basis, this is my opinion, I have no medical basis for this whatsoever. Maybe he really wasn't having insomnia and was having dementia or some other type of break or episode, or like a psychotic episode or something like that. Something happened to this guy, and I think we all agree on that. And Carrie, thanks again for bringing up the dementia aspect, because I really should have thought of that. Also, because the age of 72 back then was pretty freaking old. You know, I'm 61 and I feel like mentally, physically, I feel 61, but mentally I feel 22 or 23, which is why I'm here living my dream doing a Facebook Live. Um, because that's a fact. But anyways, so I think there were definitely some things at play here. And since this is Gals, Ghosts, and Ladies, and we are talking about the paranormal, what else possibly could have been at play here? This was also late 1800s, early 1900s. That was the time of the spiritualist movement. And I think that the spiritualist movement was a little dangerous and a lot dangerous. I think a little dangerous because people were just ignorant. What's that knowledge? A little knowledge is a dangerous thing. It really is. And so the spiritualist movement was really taken off during this time, and maybe there was some involvement in that. I don't know. But I think that people maybe didn't know what they were doing. If they were, I think that that could have been a factor. I think that, again, the dementia and possibly a mental illness or some kind of psychotic break. But something happened to this guy, and something happened to this guy there, where all these kind of weird things just kind of built up, culminated into this one huge incident. And we're talking about things leaving an imprint. Imagine the imprint that a murder-suicide would leave. So probably leave quite an imprint, was probably quite a shock to the community. So again, this particular area seems to have more than its fair share of some activity happening. And I don't want to say negative activity, because I don't really believe, this is my opinion. I don't really think it's, I think that environmentally, spiritual things can happen because of environmental things, fire, grief, all that kind of stuff, things being released. So again, I would love to know what other people think about this. I was absolutely fascinated by the history of the property. And I do have some questions here for Kristen. If Kristen is still there, I would love to hear from you. And Kerry, you are on my list as a guest. And honestly, the next time I'm going to have I'm going to have this fixed so that my co-host can be my co-host. Kristen, if you're listening, what I was wondering is, before you acquired this before you acquired this property, did you know about any of the history that we just talked about? So I'm going to ask a few questions and you take your time typing. And again, I'd love to, oh yes, you did know. All right, this is good. This is in real time. I didn't know if there's any kind of delay. Okay. All right, Kristen, I'm coming at you with my questions. So you did know a little bit about the history. Let me ask you this. How did you acquire it? Did you just happen to see it for sale, or were you interested in the area? Can you tell us a little bit about how you acquired it? And then another, just a quick yes or no question. Have you ever metal detected your property? And if the answer is yes, well, would you like to have it done again? And if the answer is no, would you like to have it done? Because gals, ghosts, and ladies, not only are we paranormal investigators, but we're experienced metal detectorists. So if you've never had anybody do that property, get me out there, because I bet we'll find some cool and interesting stuff. So, folks, I don't know. Can everybody see each other's comments? Kristen said she went into this property completely blind. What prompted you to look into the history of the house? Or let me rephrase by saying, how did you find out about what happened in 1925? How did you find out about that? Because I'd sure like to know about that, because that would be kind of a shock to find out that happened, in a house that you moved into. And how did you feel about that when you learned about that? Because I can tell you from personal experience, having something like that in my own family, it's a really traumatizing event. That's all I'm going to say about it. I think you kind of get the gist of it. So, all right, Kristen says they owned a business and they drove past it 2 times daily, and she decided that if it was still standing, then it had to have good bones. Well, that's for sure, especially if it lasted through all these fires and construction and rebuilding and relocating of buildings. So I guess you're right. It did have good bones. But it also had some skeletons, didn't it? So yeah, hope to hear from. How did you find out about the murder suicide in 1925, and what did you think about that? And then the next question that I have for you is kind of the big one. Have you had any personal, what you believe to be paranormal experiences in the home, and what would they be? And if there's anybody else listening that wants to talk about their own paranormal experience, pipe in while we're waiting to hear from Kristen. Carrie, if you have have you had any experiences there? Feel free to pipe in. I would love to hear from you. Again, this is a conversation, or I'm trying to have it be a conversation, because there's supposed to be someone here. So Kristen said that she was researching the property constantly, and she learned a lot. And she started with the Historical Society. And of course, that's always the best place to start, is the Historical Society, because I'm sure they're going to have more than those 3 pages of PDF that I had. But I can't complain. Those 3 pages of PDF, I think I gave you guys a shit ton of information. From those 3 pages of PDF, and a really cool picture of the building, I thought, too. If you want to see a picture of the building, go back to the Gals Facebook page and you'll see the ad that I made for this live stream, where I took the sky out behind it and made it all like all that kind of stuff, kind of a green screen effect. I'm having fun using Canva, making flyers for these kind of events. So Kristen said that her daughter and her husband have seen apparitions. So you have a family of believers in the home. You haven't had any experiences yourself. How did you feel, Kristen, when they first told you that they had seen an apparition or felt something unusual? What were your first thoughts about that? I'm not sure. I mean, I believe, and I can't wait to share some footage with you that a couple weeks ago. I do believe I caught a shadow, a shadow person on video. Can't wait to share that one with you. But I still don't know how I would feel if my child or my husband said, "Holy shit, I saw a ghost in the bathroom." And we've all seen something out of the corner of your eye. And I know that since I lost my dogs, Sadie and Max, I swear to God, they move through this house. I hear their collars. I hear them coming up and down the stairs. I know that Sadie, who was a very interactive dog, I felt Sadie poke me with her nose. She would poke you with her nose if she wanted her attention. But again, Kristen, how does somebody feel when their child comes to you? Because I don't know how I would feel if my child came to me and said, Mommy, I saw a ghost. Other than, a kid thinking, oh, shut my closet door, there's a monster in there. That's got to be quite unnerving. I mean, you must find yourself wanting to comfort them. And if you believe, you don't want to stifle them, but you certainly don't want to scare anybody. Um, I don't know. I don't know. How would you? I wouldn't know. If anybody's had an experience with that, please share it, because I don't know. And I know my own husband. I mean, he's not a hardcore believer like I do, but he's certainly spiritual. But I don't know what I would think if he said he saw an apparition in the house. Um, so if anybody else has an experience on their child saying that to them, we would love to hear from you. Let's see if I had any other questions for Kristen. And Kristen, if you have any questions for me as a paranormal investigator, please go ahead and ask. Or as a person, I'm happy to talk. Anybody, feel free to ask some questions. Um, so yeah, I guess my next question is really how do you deal with the experiences that you've had in the home? And I guess that goes back to the question I just asked. How are you dealing with other people telling you about their experiences in the home? Um, and was okay, so Kristen is say they're always trying to shut it down, whereas Kristen wants the opposite. She wants to talk to the house constantly. She's not had any experiences since childhood. Is, isn't that interesting? And doesn't that figure? Doesn't that figure? So you've got the two people who are like, no, I don't want to know, I don't want to see, and you've got the one person going, I believe, I want to see, I want to know, I want to hear, is not having any experiences. Um, well, as a paranormal investigator, I'll make a couple of suggestions. Blink cams in the house in your common areas are awesome because they take wonderful night vision footage, and they're motion detector activated. So in your common rooms, like your kitchen or your living room, and you can also have them on the outside as well. I mean, there's been animals on that property for a long, long time. That leaves a lot of energy. So so I would make that suggestion. Kristen, blink cameras are a pretty cool thing, and again, they have great night vision, and who knows, you might capture something. Um, and good luck, and keep trying. Have you ever had the home investigated by, I don't want to say professional, by paranormal investigators? I don't know what makes a professional paranormal investigator. Maybe somebody who gets paid for it. I like to think I'm a semi-pro. I don't get paid for it. However, I do sponsor a few paid events. But anyways, so let's hear from Carrie. So Carrie says that she stayed there for a few times, a week at a time over the summer, and she's used some paranormal equipment. So Carrie, what happened? What paranormal equipment did you use? Did you have EMF detectors? Did you have a digital camera? Were you filming in night vision? Let us know what you used, and did you find anything? That's the big question. Hitting it out to Carrie. Carrie, what did you find? What did you use, and what did you find? I'm dying to know. And Kristen says that she tries to include spirit in what she's doing through renovation. I think that's really important when you're making change to a property that's got so much of that energy and residual stuff there to include them in what's happening, because they think it's still their house. Um, and keeping asking for communication, that's should hopefully eventually elicit a response as well. So I'm still holding out for Carrie. Carrie, what did you have for equipment, and what did you use? And Kristen, back to you on, have you ever had the home professionally or semi-pro, or have you ever had a group come in and do a paranormal investigation? If so, what equipment did they use and what did they find? And what did you think of the experience? Did you participate with them? Because I know that gals, ghosts, and ladies would welcome the opportunity to go into your home and do a paranormal investigation. And we use things like EMF detectors, and I've got a couple of REM pods. Actually, I have 3 REM pods. I have some spirit boxes. I've got some night vision that's so cool. I think I've gotten really good at capturing light anomalies on night vision. So anyways, I would welcome the opportunity to come into your home with respect and investigate. Oh, and some mediums. And what did the mediums have to say? So Carrie, we're still waiting for you on what equipment did you use and what did you find? And Kristen, I'm curious about both. What did the medium have to say and what did the paranormal groups find? I wish we could do this talking. um and Sybil says that the activity picks up when you renovate, and I think that's so true. It's almost like disrupting the dust. You're disrupting the energy. um Oh, Kristen, Estes method, EMF, REM pods, dowsing rods. Oh, I'm so new at dowsing rods. And the hotel section has an area that has an old phone booth, and there are words on there that was, and I had words on that were answers to what I was asking on my spirit box. So Carrie was having an intelligent interaction. Oh my God, an old phone booth. Can you imagine? Carrie was having an intelligent interaction with her spirit box, and we all know how cool that is when you get an intelligent interaction, whether it's on the Estes method with the headphones. If anybody doesn't know what the Estes method is, I'll take a quick second to explain it. It was named after Estes Park, Colorado, where it was first done was at the Stanley Hotel, where Stephen King wrote The Shining. And it's a very haunted hotel, but it's in Estes Park, Colorado. And the Estes method was invented there, used there for the first time that we know of, and that's why it's called that. And it's, instead of a regular spirit box session where you ask questions and you have a spirit box in a room and everybody's listening, you isolate one person with noise canceling headphones and the spirit box, and you isolate them from the group, and the group would ask questions, and what the hope is that the person in the other room with the headphones on listening to whatever spirit box you have. I have a Phasma box and I fucking love it, but sorry for that F-bomb, but that's what an Estes method is. And then you want to see if that person that's listening with the noise canceling headphones in the other room, is hearing intelligent responses to what you guys are asking in the other room. So that's what the Estes method is. And when the Estes method works well, it is amazing. It is so cool. And when the Estes method doesn't work, that's a good thing too. I don't know, you know my motto, no evidence is evidence. So like when I turn my Phasma box on at home and it doesn't say anything, that is a good thing, because if it chattered all the time, well, that would be BS. So when you do get a good response from some type of spirit box when you're doing an Estes method, that's always very exciting if you can hear an interaction. I know recently I was with some friends and I heard my name on a Phasma box, on a spirit box. So that was really cool and really exciting. But the Estes method, to have that separation, that isolation, and have that back and forth is really cool. So, well, at this point, guys, I have been talking for about an hour. So, Kristen, first and foremost, I have to apologize to you that the co-host didn't work. I have to get third-party software, which I probably will be doing in the next couple of weeks on my computer, so that I can have co-hosts and I can interact better. Let me respond to Carrie here. There's a definite spot in the house that she feels. Oh, interesting, Carrie. Carrie said that she feels someone else's despair. And we know there's been a lot of loss on this property. She doesn't like to say exactly where, so that if others go, that they can find it. And interesting, she said that it faces a significant view. Now that ought to be interesting because a lot of things happen in that area. So, what does it face? Does it face where something happened there, where something happened there? So that would be very interesting. I'm gonna hold that and jot that down because I am gonna hold my breath for an invitation from Kristen to get up there and take a look around and see if we can't get some answers for her and get some back and forth for Kristen. Kristen, night vision. The medium said that she had no historical input, but when she came upon the bathroom where the murder-suicide took place, she was overcome with visuals and told me to gut this space. Kristen laughed a little because she immediately had no doubt that the medium was spot on. Kristen told her afterwards to give her a confirmation of that reading. So, and Kristen agrees we're definitely going to try this again because I would love to talk. And yes, we're going to talk offline later. I am going to come to your house with my bag of stuff. I really look forward to it. Carrie, I would love to have you as a guest as well. And I look forward to meeting you. And I want to say thank you to Sybil for tuning in and my good friend Kathy Ferrara, who for any of you is interested, I've known Kathy Ferrara since I was 5 and since she was 5. So we've known each other practically our whole life. And a shout out to my friend Lisa Aubie, who is an OG. Lisa Aubie is an original gal. The two of us went to the Lizzie Borden house years ago. It was the bomb, and it was really how I got the bug for this. So I want to say thank you to everybody who tuned in. Thank you to everyone who participated. I'm so sorry about the technical difficulties having my guests join me, but I'm glad that we were able to still talk for an hour. And I appreciate you not minding that I looked at my notes and then I looked away. Just remember, we are gals, ghosts and ladies, all paranormal, never politics. Have a good night, everybody, and I hope to hear from you all soon. One last thing. Hit me up in my DMs with any ideas for future live streams, and that's it. Oh, and email me at ghostsandladies@gmail.com. Good night, everybody. Oh, and last but not least, Auntie Mary, thank you for tuning in. I love you, Aunt Mary. I'll see you soon. Good night, everybody.